Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin the webinar at 3:05. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Avni Khangurde. I am from the communications team at Drip Capital and your host for today. On popular demand, Drip Capital is back with this webinar on understanding the RoDTEP scheme and its compliances. We also have one of the most well-received speaker, Mr. Mihir Shah. Thank you, Mr. Shah, for joining us to share your expertise with our audience today. A warm welcome and thank you to all our viewers on Zoom, YouTube, and LinkedIn for being part of Drip Capital webinar. Before we move forward, I'd like to give you all a brief information to Drip Capital. Drip Capital is a global trade finance company offering post-shipment collateral-free financing to MSME exporters in India. Drip works with over 1,500 sellers and 900 plus buyers spread across 80 plus countries. We have financed over $2 billion worth of international trade since Drip's inception in 2016. To know more about Drip Capital and to receive a call back from us, kindly fill out the form shared in the chat section right now. You may follow us on social media to stay in touch with Drip Capital. You can also follow our blogs and newsletter for recent trade updates and insights on foreign trade matters. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You may click on the link shared in the chat section. You can watch all our previous webinar videos on our YouTube channel. A note for the audience, during the webinar, you can note your questions and at the end, we will address them. You will have the opportunity to raise your hand and directly speak with Mr. Shah. Without any further delay, let's dive into today's session. The Remission of Duties and Taxes on Export Products, or RoDTEP scheme, was launched to revitalize and boost India's export industry via certain benefits to exporters in the form of rebates. By virtue of this scheme, taxes and duties would be refundable to exporters, whether central or state or imposed. Since the RoDTEP scheme is a relatively new scheme, it is essential to know its components in order to analyze its efficiency and novelty. To help us explain the nitty-gritty of this scheme, we have with us today Mr. Mihir Shah. He is an MBA and an LLP. Mr. Shah offers consultancy and advisory services in relation to foreign trade policy, GST, FEMA, RBI, customs, excise, and other allied subjects related to export-import business. He also provides training in the field of international business, covering various topics from the basic setup, marketing, government incentives, international trade agreements, and GST for foreign trade. He is also an ICC Incoterms 2020 registered trainer in India. I now ask Mr. Shah to address our viewers.
Good afternoon, good afternoon everyone. I hope I'm audible. A quick confirmation on that. Yes, thank you so much. So thank you, Drip Capital and the team once again, Rashmi and all at Drip Capital once again to invite and take this session on for Drip Capital. Yes, certainly a lot of buzz is around RoDTEP, and it is very fair that we can understand this RoDTEP so that in coming future, in the days and months where we are almost getting back to normal, we understand the scheme as an exporter and understand how we are going to be utilizing it and what are the nuances on this. However, just to understand the scheme, we need to look at the reasons and the background of how it has been created and what was the thought process and why it has been there and how similar it is to some other scheme and why people want to compare it with some old schemes and then try and get disappointed because of the rates and the calculations. So let me quickly dive down and share a screen with you guys. So I hope the presentation screen is also very visible. Okay, let me quickly, yes, there you go. So agenda for the day is very simple. We are going to be talking about the background of RoDTEP with respect to why and what and how it happened, WTO, and what triggered the RoDTEP scheme, the announcement of the RoDTEP scheme. Many of you are linking it, maybe rightly or wrongly, with MEIS scheme and the erstwhile MEIS. Now I can say it's because the scheme is technically closed. So the discontinuation of MEIS is also very clear that you want to understand that. Then the data collection and how the RoDTEP rates have been identified. There was a press note and an advisory issued. What were exporters expected to do? And then obviously, finally, the rates got announced. And then obviously, how are you going to get the benefit actually today? Because this is all with the background. But today in 2022, things have moved much faster. They are now back into, I would say, current pace. And in current pace, how are you going to be getting the necessary benefits is something which we need to look at as well. So just a quick background. So basically what happened is that United States of America went into WTO for consultation that India, who has crossed the 1,000 per annum per capita, is violating by offering some subsidies and some countervailing measures, some schemes of exports which are not as per the SCM agreement, as per the WTO, and hence it should be taken up. The consultation process went through each program. Multiple incentive schemes were at the objection level. Necessary replies were made by India. However, what happened and what transpired later on is that sorry, did I go ahead a little? Yes. So on 31st of October, the WTO panel reviewed the replies and the counterclaims and the issues of the US, and they found out that there were certain schemes, typically the MEIS, the EOUs scheme, the EPCG scheme, which were not in compliance with the WTO SCM agreement and should be withdrawn at a relevant timeline. India went into appeal and applied to the appellate body on 19th of, they decided that they'll apply on 19th of November. They filed an appeal on 22nd of November 2019. And the matter is since then pending, as there is no appellate body set up under the WTO at the moment because of some shortfall of the team. Now, this is in the background what is happening. Meanwhile, considering that this scheme is probably not going to stow or be the face in WTO. Way back in 2019, the finance minister actually, for the first time, announced that there would be a scheme called RoDTEP. So RoDTEP was announced way back in 2019, and let me dive down on that path a little bit, because that is the background, and if you can understand the context of it, because many of you are comparing it with the erstwhile MEIS. So first of all, way back in 2019, and if I remember it correctly, it was October of 19, where immediately after the first panel review report came in, and then in November we decided to go for appeal. But as soon as the report came in, probably at that point of time, it was decided that we will have a scheme which will be somewhat similar to RoDTEP. MEIS at that point of time was the target. So MEIS was supposed to be almost assuming that would go down, or they'll have to be closing MEIS, because if you read through the MEIS provision, it is a promotion scheme. It is a scheme to promote exports, and the rates and the determined factors are more for India to give a promoting boost to the exporters because of certain inefficiency, infrastructural challenges, and others. If you recall MEIS, there were originally rate of 2%, 3%, and 5%. So these were the typical rates which were available to various products depending upon which product you are exporting. Then in November of 17, that is post July 17, post GST was introduced, because there were some challenges of refunds and stuff like that. Department has increased that MEIS in many categories by 2%. So 2% became 4%. In some cases, 3% became 5%, 5% became 7%. Effectively, you had 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 rates available for MEIS. And you were happily getting that rates. Now, two things have happened during this point of time. Please understand this categorically. So in 2019, there was a message by the FM that there would be a scheme called RoDTEP. And also, during that point of time, there was a notification issued by DGFT. I have the, the notification details were there in 2019, which said that effective of 1st of January 2020, I'll repeat, 1st of January 2020, that additional 2% of MEIS will be stopped. So MEIS will be continued, but additional 2% which you are getting will be stopped, because that's not very, very lucrative. Now, obviously, please remember the background again is that the MEIS was the target, which MEIS wanted to be removed, and RoDTEP had to be introduced. RoDTEP process was on, discussion was on, but nothing came into forelight. In fact, only in March of 2020, that is 13 March 2020, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs actually gave the RoDTEP a green signal. So it wasn't approved. However, we all know that March and February end and early March 2020, there was the COVID pandemic. Everything got standstill almost in all the countries, including India. And we also had the lockdown and the others thing to follow. So on 1st of April, where the new policy was supposed to be announced, effective of 2020 and for next 5 years, there was an extension given that the policy will be continued for 1 more year. So effective of 31st of March 2020, where the 1520 policy was supposed to expire, and from 1st April 2020, you were to have a new foreign trade policy. The policy will continue for 1 more year because the lockdown and the pandemic is there. We don't want exporters to look at the new rules and new regulations and just continue the way things are happening. There was a confusion on what will happen in the MEIS. Please remember, the RoDTEP is yet not formulated. The discussion is on, the working is on. The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has already taken some data during the time from October 19 to March 20. And they are in a process to come out with a scheme, but it's not yet ready. So there was already a notification issued that MEIS would continue until a time that RoDTEP would come into place, or up to 31st of December, whichever is earlier. So that was also a caveat, and hence a lot of people feel that RoDTEP and MEIS are replacement of each other, but that's not the case. Now, please understand this clearly. On 1st of September 2020, DGFT very clearly notified that, rather, there were three things to be notified. One, that MEIS for the period of September, October, November, December, there was a cap per IC holder of maximum of 2 crore. Total MEIS would have been only about 5,000 crores. If you have not exported in the previous year, you are not eligible for that from September onwards. But more importantly, it very clearly said that benefits of MEIS would not be available for export from 1st January 2021. This was already notified. It is a notification, and it has been clearly informed on 1st of September that this will not. It was not that this will replace something, because it is very clear the DGFT had announced the scheme. It had very clearly closed the scheme from 1st of January 2021. So effectively 1st of January 2021, we would have no MEIS whatsoever. Please understand, there is no mention of RoDTEP coming or RoDTEP would come. We all understand that, yes, logically, this means that RoDTEP would come, and that was what we were all waiting for. But that doesn't mean that it's a replacement of an MEIS. And my request to all exporters is, please don't consider it as a replacement of MEIS. RoDTEP is a scheme in itself. It's an independent scheme with some specific purpose. Now, during this period from 19 to 2020, if I recall right, it was almost 2 or maybe even 3 times that the data were collected. In fact, first when in October or November of 19, October when it was first announced, November onwards data were collected. Then lockdown happened. Then another round of data collection happened in July of 2020, where Ministry of Finance initiated the entire thing under the chairmanship of Sri G.K. Pillai. And a RoDTEP committee was created so that the rates could be identified or notified. And even the trade notice was given to the exporters so that exporters submit the data. Now, please understand, if you see, the trade notice was in October of 2020. 1st September, it was very clear that the MEIS is shut, effective of January. But what is going to happen about RoDTEP? Nobody knows, right? Because we were still collecting the data. We were still working on that. Now, why is RoDTEP different? RoDTEP is different because, as the scheme says, it says the remission of duties and taxes on exported product. I come back to this slide just before that. Let me tell you what it says. So basically, its objective is to refund the currently unrefunded duties, taxes, and levies. So whatever export of goods happen, on that, if you have any duties, taxes, directly or indirectly, which are not being refunded to you or you are not getting a credit of it, they have been captured in form of RoDTEP, and they have been provided to you as a refund in RoDTEP mechanism. And hence, please note, it is not a replacement of an MEIS. It is not a name change. It is a completely and scheme and offering difference. When we say what are the refunded or unrefunded, I want to discuss a little bit about understanding this. See, when you import raw materials, you get a duty exemption scheme under advance authorization. If you want refund, it is under duty drawback. So your customs duty are taken care of. Your IGST or GST is any which way zero rated supply, and you get a refund of your input credit. So your GST is taken care of. Your input customs duty is taken care of. In many cases, it is not payable, so it's exempted. Then how and what is left over to refund during the entire process of exporting the goods? Well, there are this list, and this is a data which was collected based on these parameters. In terms of state or central, there is an excise duty and VAT on the fuel which is used in transportation. Now, this fuel you don't get credit of. So when you move the cargo, when you move raw material from your supplier to your factory, when you move the finished goods from your factory to the port, you end up paying for the fuel. And in that fuel, there is an excise duty and there's a VAT component, which of course you don't get input credit or any credits of, which means there's a cost to you. You use fuel in generating captive power if you are having, gen sets in your factories. There are certain places where there is mandi tax. Electricity duty is major component where many manufacturers have to shell out huge amount of electricity duty, which ultimately gets added to the cost of the product which you are going to export. Stamp duty in cases of export documentation, which have to be registered. So these embedded taxes, which do not get recredit to you, are refunded in form of RoDTEP. So it's a very lengthy and a very detailed exercise which the RoDTEP committee undertook, and the process of identifying the benefits was started. Now, this was way back in 2019. In September, we got a message that MEIS would no more be continuing from 1st of January, but there was no light on the RoDTEP. What would happen and what is the scheme on RoDTEP? Exactly, I remember it was evening, and then I saw the press note. It's 8:40. I think by about 9 in the evening is where we started intimating exporters that effective of 1st of January 2021, RoDTEP will be applicable for exports. The press note clearly mentioned three things: that effective of 1st of January 2021, there would be a RoDTEP scheme in place for export of goods. It also said that the rates for the RoDTEP benefit, the money or the amount of benefit which you will get, is not yet notified. It will be notified later as per the recommendation of Sri G.K. Pillai committee. And it is basically the refund of embedded tax and duties and taxes which are not yet so far refunded. So there was also an indirect message that you have to understand that this is not a freebie or this is not a promotion scheme. It is a refund of taxes. So the amount of tax which is actually paid on an average would be actually refunded to you. So intention or the idea was very clear to tell you that the refund would not be that exorbitant as you may expect. On 1st of January, a customs advisory by the CBIC was issued, and the advisory provided three parts in its mention. Overall idea of the scheme. It also mentioned about how you will create an online ledger and the system, which we will discuss now because it is now very relevant. More importantly, the third part, which is, I would say, that point of time was a critical part, is how from 1st of January, because it was informed in the night, morning onwards, you are exporting, then you are eligible to take the benefit. Then what are you supposed to do in terms of getting the scheme and the benefit? Well, very simple. Each exporter had to declare the intention at the export item level wise. So at your line item wise, in your shipping bill, in your bill of export, you had to identify and say, yes, I want to claim RoDTEP. So RoDTEP Y would be required, and a declaration which was provided in the advisory and the press note, that is Annexure B, was also to be mentioned in the shipping bill. So a declaration and RoDTEP Y. So in the shipping bill, which is now digital shipping bill, or you can say an e-shipping bill, there's a window, there's a field, and that's why I call this is a custom house agent's area of expertise. But as an exporter, I will show you where it comes in. But under the single window information type, under each line item, you had to mention whether you want RoDTEP yes, so RoDTEP Y, or RoDTEP no. And under that statement declaration field, you had to declare the declaration of RoDTEP by quoting a code called RD001. So what would happen? I'm sure most of you depend on your custom house agent, the custom broker, who has to prepare the checklist, the shipping bill draft. So when he would give you the draft, this is the declaration. When he'll give you the draft, this is how your draft would look like. The single window declaration in the checklist, in the shipping bill checklist, there are three items. Each item, as you can see, would have RoDTEP Y, RoDTEP Y, RoDTEP Y written on it. Each item here has RoDTEP Y. Each column in the declaration, there are three items again for three. And each in this particular software, which the CHA was using, it had the entire declaration pre-printed. There are instances, I'll give you other instances. This is another shipping bill checklist where the item code is 1. If you see serial number 1, there you go, RoDTEP Y year. And then all other declarations, then you have RoDTEP Y2 for the second item. In this, the entire declaration is not printed. It is RD001 for item serial number 1. And then for item serial number 2, also RD001. So the necessary declaration has been added. Now, once you have done this, what happens in the shipping bill? Well, let's look at the shipping bill also. In the shipping bill, if I remember it correctly, it is page number 4 onwards, where, or 4 or 5 onwards, where single window declaration, part D. For each line item, again, you will have information called RoDTEP Y or RoDTEP No. So this should be there in each of the fields. In fact, the shipping bill also has now started, now meaning at that point of time started, having a column on the first page itself, which would say RoDTEP amount. My request is, please do not worry about the amount which is mentioned. The amount which is mentioned as RoDTEP amount, because until a good number of days, and I'll discuss that, but precisely until the rates were announced, RoDTEP amount in this column were dummy values or notional values coming just for the system to capture it correctly. Because from 1st of January, the RoDTEP scheme so-called was on, but there was no rate announced. So we did not know how much rate or the benefit is going to come. Mr. Raghu, the shipping bill declaration or the like drawback, you have scheme code 19. RoDTEP doesn't have any scheme code. RoDTEP doesn't have any scheme code. There is no 21 scheme code, no 19 scheme code for RoDTEP. Scheme code 19 or scheme code, whatever combination you use, whether it is 40, 41, whatever it is only for those schemes. But for RoDTEP, RoDTEP Y declaration in the single window declaration and the RD001 declaration has to be there. There is no scheme code for RoDTEP. So as far as this amount is concerned, be okay. But let's talk about 2022. As on today, the rates are announced. We have already know the rates have been announced, and hence now the amount which will come accurately, which will be as per the rates which have been notified, and the system already has those inbuilt. So when were the rates announced? Well, good news, 17th of August 2021. Yes, 1st January 2021 was the date when RoDTEP started effectively. Retrospectively, from 17th of August, meaning from 17th of August, when the rates were announced, it will go back to 1st of January, almost 8 months and 17 days, or 7 months and 17 days. It will go back from 1st of January, all exports which were done and which are eligible under the rate as per the scheme, it will be available to you based on the rates announced. DGFT, that is the Ministry of Commerce, the department under the Ministry of Commerce, has announced it as a scheme, RoDTEP under Chapter 4 of the Foreign Trade Policy. It announced Appendix 4R, which has covering HSN codes for 8,555 items. 8-digit HSN code level, 8,555 items have been covered. Yes, all are not covered. Mr. Sabil, I'll come to chapter 29 and I'll talk about that a little bit. All HSN codes are not covered. There are only 8,555 HSN codes which are covered. Now, it also provided you by way of the notification that how the scheme is going to function. So the scheme is going to function like a duty credit script. So you're not going to get money in cash. You're not going to get a bank account. You're going to get a duty credit script. But this time it's going to be e-script. So almost like an MEIS or an old script, whether you call it the focus market or the erstwhile DPB, all those scripts mechanism which were there, almost similar, but those scripts were a manual script. This is e-script. Another thing what has happened is that the entire module of generating scripts, controlling script, and utilizing the script, which was until now for all other schemes on the DGFT platform, has moved straight to the customs platform, and the ICE gate is going to be the nodal website for all of it. The e-script can be used for making the payment of customs duty or the BCD, and it is freely transferable. So you can transfer it to anybody else as well. So that is what was announced. The Appendix 4R. So all those who are asking what is the rate of your HSN or your product? Well, you have to go to the DGFT website. Under the options called regulatory updates, you have an option called RoDTEP. And I'll just give you, this is the regulatory update. In that you have an option called RoDTEP. And in that RoDTEP, in that RoDTEP option, you have got the notification and the rates. And once you click on the rate, you will you'll get the Appendix 4R, which has entire 8,555 items or the HSN codes which have the rate. Now I want to draw your attention on a very specific things, that the entire rate schedule is typically in 3 categories of rates. First category is something like this, where when you export, you will get benefit based on your HSN code multiplied by your FOB value, the RoDTEP rate. In this scenario, the unit of measurement, though mentioned, should be ignored. There is no relevance to it. So effectively, which means that if I'm exporting picture books or drawing and coloring books for children, whatever be my FOB value multiplied by 1.1% is my RoDTEP amount which I will be eligible. Ignore the kg here. There is no relevant in this type of rate structure. So if I'm exporting 49030010 picture books, and if I'm exporting it at $1,000, 1,000 into 1.1 multiplied by the rupee value, rupee exchange rate, that is the RoDTEP rate or RoDTEP benefit which will come to I will be getting it as an e-script when I claim the RoDTEP in this case. Second, export of, let's say I'm doing export of carpets. So this is the second type of rates. Now, mind you, this is just an example. You'll have to look at your products. I have just taken example of the rates so that I can explain you. But the entire list is available in the Appendix 4R. So when I export carpets, now you will see there is something to added. This unit code is there, but even the cap has been added, which means I am going to get, when I export carpets, 2.6% of FOB value or rupees 28.40 per square meter, whichever is lower. So please understand, just like it is in the drawback, carpets at 2.6% or 28.40 rupees per square meter is the RoDTEP amount which I can claim when I export carpets under the HSN code 57023110. And thirdly, this is for the vehicles. This is integrated mono vehicle, air conditioned, non-air conditioned. These are all vehicles under Chapter 87. Here, there is no percentage of FOB value, no value cap. There is a specific amount. 8,100 rupees per unit of the vehicle I sell, I will get RoDTEP at that rate. 8,100 per unit. Simple. So these are 3 forms of rates which are there in the rate schedule. Obviously, it doesn't matter to you. It is only what you and your export product is. You have to look for that. So log on to DGFT website. There is an option called RoDTEP. In that, there is a rate column or Appendix 4R. You can use, or you can refer to that PDF file. 8,555 line items are notified. All right. So that's as far as RoDTEP rates are concerned. Now, couple of conditions on that front. Number 1, there are certain ineligible criteria or ineligible exports which do not or are uneligible for RoDTEP scheme. Effectively, there are 15, by the way. So exports of imported goods which are not manufactured, or they are not Indian goods. You have bought it or you have imported it and you are selling it. Imported goods which are re-exported or exported back are not covered under RoDTEP. Exports where transshipment happens, you are just the transshipment port and it is going to go through India to some other country. Exports where products are subject to MEP, minimum export price, or export duty. Agro products where some products which have got a minimum export price, you are not eligible for RoDTEP. Products which are restricted under export under Schedule 2 of ITC or prohibited to export. Obviously, technically, when it is prohibited, you can't export. Restricted, you can apply for a license, you can export, but RoDTEP benefit will not be given. Under Chapter 7 of the Foreign Trade Policy, when you sell within India, but with some conditions, for some criteria, you get deemed export benefit. Those are not eligible. Supply of products to manufactured by DTA. So a normal unit supplies to an SEZ unit. In a domestic terms, it is a export, but for RoDTEP, you will not get RoDTEP benefit. Products manufactured by the biotechnology park and electronic hardware technology parks is not eligible. If you are under the warehousing system under Section 65 of the Customs Act, and you're taking benefit of the warehouse systems now called mover, you are not eligible for RoDTEP. And three most important, which is probably affecting you, me on a daily basis, is if you are exporting under advance authorization, if you're claiming the incentives of advance authorization, then, which means advance authorization, special advance or whichever, or even DFIA, you are not going to get RoDTEP. Somebody, I think in the chat asked, if I read it correctly, I think Mr. Vicky asked, if you are in the import of EPCG and then exporting, you can claim EPCG as well as RoDTEP. There is no restriction. In fact, you can claim either drawback also. But if you claim advance authorization, please remember, if you claim advance authorization, you will not be eligible for RoDTEP. EPCG is not a problem. RoDTEP and EPCG will go hand in hand. Along with that, you'll have to probably add drawback. You cannot add advance authorization. Supply by EOU, a 100% export-oriented unit, if they are exporting, at the moment they are not eligible for RoDTEP. And similarly, units which are SEZ units or in the free trade zones, when they export, they are not eligible for RoDTEP. These three criteria, which are very, very, very important as an exports, India's exports, and maybe they are also equally suffering the duties and the taxes which actually you get under the RoDTEP. However, at this point of time, they are not eligible for RoDTEP. In fact, the notification has a paragraph separately saying that these conditions 10, 11, and 12, if revised, and the department will work on it, and they will come back to you, and if they'll change, they will amend the notification accordingly. Some other thing, last but not very important, is goods should not be used. So it's if you're exporting second-hand goods, they are not eligible for RoDTEP. And more importantly, of course, by now, most of the ports are EDI enabled or electronically, EDI linked ports. But exports through EDI ports only are eligible for RoDTEP, because the system of RoDTEP is completely e-system. And if it is not there is no if there is a manual processing, a manual shipping bill filed, then it will not work. So these are the conditions of you to get RoDTEP. This has been announced on 17th of August, 2021. The scheme is effective of 1st of January, 21. So now the process had to be done that all old backlog had to be paid off based on the incentive. Now, there are some, when we saw the rates, there were some challenges. And what were the challenges? When the rates were announced, we have observed that chapter 1, 2, 24, 25, 26, 27, right up to 30, 31, chapter 47, chapter 72, 73 related to iron and steel, and chapter 77, all of these are not covered. So when 8,555 items were there, organic, inorganic chemicals, iron and steel, articles of iron and steel have not been covered under RoDTEP. This has been a problem. This has been a huge concern. Each of the association, export promotion councils, and everybody has taken it up with the department. What I understand, and I'm not saying that this is the underlying principle or this is, but this is what we've understood from the responses, that a certain budget or allocation was to be given, and hence these chapters did not find mention, or they could not be accommodated in the RoDTEP, benefit. Whether will they come, will they not come, we are not aware of it, but I'm sure everybody is trying to work on it. 3 more chapters related to textile, man-made fabric and garments and others were also part of it, which were not there. Chapter 61, 62, 63. Chapter 61, 62, 63, which is man-made garments and man-made made-ups of garments. They actually were supposed to be, merged with RoDTEP, but they, under the textile ministry, had a scheme already similar in place called ROSTEL, ROSCTL. The name is different. The probably the heart and soul is the same. Rebate of state and central taxes and levies. This ROSTEL was already there in existence earlier, and even before RoDTEP came into existence, ROSTEL was already approved for next 5 years. Originally, the plan was, of course, 61, 62, 63 will also be part of RoDTEP, and all of that would happen. But since ROSTEL was already approved and ROSTEL is already in place, it was decided to continue ROSTEL for 61, 62, 63 independently, and hence they don't have RoDTEP in place. So ROSCTL is an independent scheme for chapter 61, 62, 63, almost getting the similar benefits. The calculation is separate for ROSTEL. The notification is separate for ROSTEL. Parallel works the same method, but it is slightly different. Accounting is different because it has been planned and worked through the textile ministry. And of course, finance ministry is giving it. The e-script version, the way it is going to be disbursed is exactly same as RoDTEP. The module are the same. The IceGate functioning will be same, but it is going to be called as ROSTEL or ROSCTL and not RoDTEP. Hence, 61, 62, 63 will not feature in RoDTEP, which is fine. But these chapters, 1 to 24 to 30, 31, and 47, this 14 chapters, unfortunately, do not get RoDTEP benefit at the moment. All right. Now, for all those who are getting RoDTEP benefits, rates are gaye, everything is done. Now what? Well, please understand the system. First and foremost, there is no application in terms of separate application for RoDTEP. Your RoDTEP Y mentioned on the shipping bill itself is your application for claiming RoDTEP. So RoDTEP Y and RoDTEP No is your practically an application which you are making at the time of exports. Obviously, this means that on 17th of August, when my chemical exporters or my pharma exporters exported under Chapter 30, they also had mentioned Y, but obviously they will not get it because the rates have not been announced for them. But for rest of them, when they have mentioned it RoDTEP Y and they have exported it, the system will start processing it. IceGate is the platform of the customs. In fact, it is a notified customs common platform. So you need to have your login access duly DSC certified. Just for a quick reference, if you do not have a DSC certified login on the IceGate platform, you need an IC copy. You need an authority letter or the name of the person whom you are creating it. If you are a private limited or a limited company, I would prefer a board resolution instead of an authority letter, because authority letter has to be signed by all partners, all directors. A self-certified copy of Aadhaar or any of the license. You will select the list of the ports. This can be added and amended later also. Very critical. You will require a class 3 digital signature, an individual class 3 signature in the name of the person whom you're applying. So it could be your CEO, CFO, your director, your partner, whoever is applying for that IceGate login has to have a DSC, a class 3 digital signature. The software requires some setting of Java and some details. The entire write-up is available on the customs website, IceGate website. But a quick option and a quick understanding which we have understood based on the practice is, number one, Internet Explorer 11 will work. I am not seeing it working with Edge. It will not work with Google Chrome. It is an old Java method. At the most, it works with Mozilla Firefox. So, but I would still recommend Internet Explorer 11. It requires a latest Java version. It requires some settings to be done to make sure that the PKI enabled, meaning the Java and the Internet Explorer talk to each other so that the digital signature which you're putting will be read through and then it will get certified. Once you apply for the IceGate login, it goes back to the custom server. The IceGate takes anything between 24 to 48 hours or maybe a little more to approve you login. In case if there is some challenge in the documentation, it will come back as rejected. You apply it again. Once and only once you have the DSC certified IceGate login, you will be eligible or you will be able to do things on related to RoDTEP. So once you have a RoDTEP or a IceGate login duly DSC certified, you can log on with your login ID and password. Well, let me tell you, at the login stage, you don't need DSC. DSC is only required for account creation. After that, in fact, it works on Google Chrome also perfectly fine. So once you have logged in, under the financial services, you have an option called eScripts. You click on eScripts. In this, you will create what is called as RoDTEP ledger. So if you have not created a ledger is nothing but like if I have to put it, it's like a container, or it's like a wallet where your scripts will come, your shipping bills will come. You can see it, view it, and do things on that ledger. If you have not created, it doesn't mean that your benefit is gone. You have to create now so you can see it. Your data, if your application is already there, your shipping bills are already there, you will be able to see it. So when you click on RoDTEP ledger, it will create a ledger, something like this, which will have RoDTEP. It will say it is active. Now you'll have buttons at the bottom, which you use to effectively search your data. So when you click on the shipping bill details, you will see all your shipping bill details. So you select the shipping bill. It will give you which scheme. RoDTEP is the scheme. Now, please remember, in RoDTEP, the data will be available to you port-wise. What do I mean by port-wise? Export port-wise. So if you are exporting from multiple ports, you will have your data segregated in different port-wise. So if you select Nhava Sheva, it will show you Nhava Sheva data. If you select Chennai, it will be Chennai. If you select Mumbai Air Cargo, Sahar Airport, it will be different. Delhi Airport, it will be different. So you cannot merge it together. The data will be stored port-wise only, and it will be available port-wise only. So assuming I have selected some data, and there you go. You will see this is INSA 1, which is Nhava Sheva. And it will show you all the shipping bill. It will show you the shipping bill date. Scroll date is the scroll where the data has been processed, and the amount of RoDTEP which has been sanctioned. This is the correct amount. You may want to go back and check individually line item wise, multiply it with the rate, your FOB value and everything, and you will see the total amount coming to this. So once you've seen this, this is the place where you are able to see entire list of shipping bills which you're going to be using for making the RoDTEP eScript. Now, please listen this. You have to consume or understand this. This is like, that when you go out for shopping, and if you are a, loyalty member of, let's say, Shoppers Stop or, any of these stores, Lifestyle or anything, and, every time you put your card and then you start getting points, and then you redeem it into one voucher. Exactly the same thing. Every time you are shipping, this is your, script amount which is generated. Now, this is just the script amount which you have generated. You have not generated a script. You need a script to be using at the time of import. You cannot use this. You have an option to select one script or one shipping bill. So I can create a script of 1606, or I can select all of these and create one single script. Choice is mine. Choice is mine. I have to decide whether I want to create one single script of each of this, or I want to select all. In fact, this is showing only 10 items and they have only 6. Probably if I select a drop down and I say 100, I will have 100 of export shipping bills, and I can select as many as I want. The restriction which many of you, if you were using and exporting under MEIS, of 50 shipping bills is no more valid in this case. In this case, 50 shipping bill requirement is no more valid. There is no restriction of 50 shipping bills. But there is a challenge. In MEIS, you could make one script of multiple ports. You could have air cargo, you can have Nhava Sheva, you can have Chennai, you can have multiple ports. In this case, you cannot have. One script will be created per port, meaning you cannot mix the port data. Once created, you can use it at any port. You can have a Nava Sheva script generated based on your Nava Sheva shipment. Once the script is generated, you can import or use that script at Kandla or at Chennai or at Calcutta. No problem. Anywhere in India. But if you have, let's say this on my slide, I have 6 shipments from INSA 1, which is Nava Sheva seaport. Let's say I have another 10 shipments from Calcutta. 10 plus 6, 16, I cannot merge it. I will have to, by default, make at least 2 scripts, if not more. I can make more, my choice, but at least 2 scripts, because I will combine this 6 in one script and another 10 in another script. So per port, there'll be a script. Couple of things which I want you to understand and remember in this scenario is once your shipping bill gets processed, just like your drawback and other RMS based system, the scroll will generate, and from the scroll date, as you can see here, 15th of March, 17th of March, 24th of March, 1st of April, these are the scroll dates. The shipping bill will remain in the ledger for 1 year from the scroll date. Please remember this. From the scroll date, it will remain in the ledger for 1 year. If you do not make the script out of it, by default, automatically, the script will be generated. Unfortunately, we are not privy to that 1 year period. So I'm not aware whether it will generate a combined script of 15th March because on 15th March 2022, that is on 14th March 2022, 1 year will get over. So on 15th March, will this generate a combined script of 1606 plus 19084, or will it make an individual script? My understanding and my guess shows it will independently make 2 scripts, because 2 of my shipping bills have got time barred. Please understand, it is not taking away your benefit. It is generating script on itself automatically. So you will have a small script of 1606 rupees also, and you'll have another script of 19084 also, independently by default, automatically generated by the system after 1 year. But if today you decide, today on 11th of February, you want all of these scripts to be prepared into one single script, you don't want to take a risk. So you click on it, generate a script, e-script will be generated. The moment the e-script is generated, whether automatically or whether you generate it, the validity of e-script is also 12 months from the date of issue. Please understand, shipping bill scroll, you have 12 months to convert it into e-script. And once converted into e-script, you have another 12 months to utilize it. If I have to net understand, maximum 2 years period is available to you. Maximum 2 years. So within 2 years, you are supposed to convert this value of shipping bill into script and utilize it. If you don't utilize it, there is no extension or there is no revalidation whatsoever. All right. Now, moving further, once you have created a script, you can click on the script details. It will show you how many scripts or what it is. The script can be used in import. You are able to use it for your imports. So you don't pay your BCD. You will not pay your customs duty. You will pay rest all of it. Please remember, it is not an exemption. It is a way of paying duty. So you will still be paying social welfare surcharge, IGST, and any other duty. Only BCD can be debited via RoDTEP script. If you wish to transfer, you can click on the transfer script option. It will ask you for an account number. The account number meaning the person to whom you want to transfer also has to have an IceGate ledger of RoDTEP. He will be giving you his account number, which is nothing but his IC number. You can select that, select the script which you want to transfer, send an OTP, approve an OTP which has been sent to the registered email ID, which was registered while making this DSC enabled RoDTEP ledger, and it will get transferred to the person whom you're transferring. That person also has to approve that script that he's accepting it, and then he can utilize the e-script within the next 1 year or whatever time limit the script validity is. So script is valid. Even if I transfer, the transfer date doesn't make any difference. The generation date is the date within which the validity is there. If I had a script which was on 1st of, let's say 15th of February last year, 15th of February to this year, it will, 14th of February this year, it will expire. Even if I transfer today on 11th, it is only 3 days validity because the script date was of 1 year before. So you're going to use these scripts and you're going to utilize this for your imports. So what are the modalities on the IceGate platform? Very simple. The system of declaration and accepting or asking that you are under RoDTEP yes or no is completely online. Once you apply, the scrolls will be generated and the amounts will be credited to the IceGate portal. You can club, merge, as we've said, multiple shipping bills, but it will be only per port wise. You have 12 months to create e-scroll. If not generated, it will be auto-generated. E-scripts will be generated port-wise. We have already explained that. And once generated, you have 12 months from the date of issue to utilize it. All right. Please note, if you have not mentioned RoDTEP Y in the shipping bill, the system will not capture those shipping bill, and hence you will not accrue or you will not get any RoDTEP benefit. Please remember, it is a system driven, and hence it is very essential that RoDTEP Y should be mentioned in the benefit. No changes will be allowed after the EGM is filed, and it will be almost non-changeable once an application or the shipping bill is systemly approved, and there's no amendment technically possible on this front. All right. So lastly, before we, yes, I will take up questions. I will share the PPT. Don't worry. 3 aspects which were very critical. RoDTEP rates for advance authorization and rates for people who probably are finding it very low or there should be a correction or anomalies. The Commerce Ministry, the DGFT, has already reconstituted the RoDTEP committee again under the chairmanship of Sri G.K. Pillai, and they are looking into the aspects of what can be done. Hopefully, we are assuming that the report should come fast. If not later, I think it was earlier expected that it will happen somewhere in the budget or budgetary announcement. It has not happened. So we are assuming that maybe on 1st of April, when the new foreign trade policy comes in, we expect that there should be some new amendment in the RoDTEP. This is an assumption. Please don't take my word that it will come, but it's an assumption. We are expecting this to happen. Hopefully this should change and we should get the updates on these few aspects of it. All right. So thank you so very much for your patient hearing. I understand all of you wanted the link, copy of presentation. There's a link to the presentation. It's called www.speakersco/today's date 1102. Feel free to put in your comments and download the presentation for your reference. It's speakersco.com/1102. Feel free to refer to the presentation for your reference. My only humble request is the presentation and the details are based on current situation. Tomorrow things might have changed. The procedure or process might have got updated. So finally, whenever you're looking at it, just re-verify the latest changes because things are dynamic and we have seen many things updating, changing on a regular basis. Even the ledger, the structure on the portal may have got little change. Feel free to use this as a reference point, and I hope it will help you in understanding the RoDTEP better. All right. Thank you so much. I am happy to take any questions and queries. I see a lot of questions in the chat. So over to you guys at DRIP, and then we may take the questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shah, for detailed insights on RoDTEP. It was an insightful session as always. Let's dive into the Q&A round without any further delay. We will now begin with the Q&A. An announcement to our Zoom audience. To ask a question directly to our speaker, kindly raise your hands and please do not add questions in the chat section. For our viewers on YouTube and LinkedIn, you can add your questions in the comment section. Mr. Rajesh Kumar Mehta, you can unmute yourself, sir. Mr. Rajesh, you can go ahead with your question.